Just how close may startle you, as Charlie Rose now finds out. Charlie?
Can you name this country's largest intelligence gathering operation? Most people would probably guess either the FBI or CIA. Wrong on both counts. In this report, aired on the CBS Morning News in March of last year, correspondent Robert Pierpoint tells us why the NSA is such a well-kept secret.
We're doing a story about a federal government agency known as NSA. Do you know what it is and what it does?
No, I don't.
NSA? I know an insurance company.
No, I don't.
NSA? Nah.
NSA? No, I never heard of it.
The NSA. Officials of the National Security Agency are not likely to be offended that so few know what it is. In fact, the NSA likes it that way. Behind all this obscurity and steel fencing is an agency considered vital to the safety of this nation. It was founded in 1952 by President Harry Truman in an executive order that to this day is still stamped secret. Headquartered at Fort Meade, Maryland, between Washington and Baltimore, the NSA operates quietly in these buildings, under which are said to be acres of the world's most highly sophisticated scientific computers. The computers work round the clock, storing, retrieving, and filtering millions of words per day, picked out of the ether by the agency's antennae at listening posts around the world, and through spy-in-the-sky satellites which can be moved over sensitive areas for direct targeting. The NSA's budget is around $8 billion a year. That it employs some 80,000 people, about a third of them military and the rest civilians. It has a different mission from the better-known Central Intelligence Agency, which engages in human intelligence, so-called HUMIN. The CIA analyzes vast quantities of information, and a few of its agents also engage in traditional cloak-and-dagger type spying. Soviet missile launches in Central Asia were for many years monitored from a highly secret base in Iran, one of NSA's most important. But the Iranian Revolution forced its closure, leaving a large gap in NSA's intelligence network. The agency managed to recover by setting up a new listening post on Chinese soil. Another base can be found in Yorkshire, England, at Menwith Hill, and similar stations are located in Turkey, Australia, Thailand, and elsewhere. Closer to home, the NSA operates a big listening post in a remote valley of the West Virginia countryside. Surrounded by the thick woods of a national forest, the NSA eavesdrops under the cover of a military base. In fact, the agency has been compared to a huge vacuum cleaner, sucking up through its vast electronic pipelines enormous quantities of words daily in a variety of languages. Robert Pierpoint, CBS News, Washington.
Coverage advised that it is now probably going to be shown next week. However, the ever-vigilant, ever-watchful eye of the blank will continue to monitor the situation in case CBS tries to pull a fast one on us. It is truly almost as impossible to fool as it is for a camel to go through it. Then it says, requested copy of interview with the Puzzle Palace's author, Mr. Bamford, which was taped by erased during the midnight shift. Chief agreed to have a copy of him, which one? Now, what is that? How did you get this? Why did they do that? What's the NSA doing?
Well, I wrote a piece for the Washington Post
concerned about you
on NSA's reaction to the book, to the Puzzle Palace, when it came out. So I requested under the Freedom of Information Act all the materials NSA has on me. Again, I never worked for NSA, I'm just a journalist. And they've sent me about 5 inches worth of material so far. That's one of the documents that I received.
Having to do with the report, where they wanted to make sure they had a copy of it.
That's right. They've taped basically every program I've been on, and that was a report from the operations center at NSA telling them make sure you tape this program tomorrow.
Bob Pierpoint did a good job there of telling us what the NSA does. The Puzzle Palace is an extraordinary book published in 1982 in hardback the first time, all about the Puzzle Palace, some 500-plus pages. Has anything changed since you wrote this book?
Yes, there's been a number of changes. First of all, I wrote about the lack of actual security, physical security, and that type of security at NSA, where you could actually walk right in the front door, sit down in the lobby, and listen to a number of conversations going on. Now you can't get even near the front door. There are cement blockades around it. A number of other things have changed. The NSA has become much more secretive again. At one point there was a little opening. NSA was letting down some of the secrecy during the Carter administration. Now it's tightened up
What's the budget now?
Again. It's hard to say. It's the NSA is 5 times larger than the CIA, and the CIA has been estimated at $2 billion, so
See.
somewhere between $8 and $10 billion probably.
What's interesting is that the NSA came up again for attention because of 007. I remember reading a letter by Admiral Inman, Bobby Inman, who used to be deputy director, I guess, of the CIA,
Yeah.
who also was at NSA at
He
one
was
point
the
in his
director.
career. And he was being interviewed first on a news program, and he said he was very concerned about what information we were releasing because it might disclose some of our own gathering devices. Pick up the story because you wrote about that also.
Yes, that's right. I did a piece for the Washington Post on the Korean airline incident, and the intelligence community was very much against releasing any information about the Korean airline incident, primarily because they argue that it would be giving too much information away to the Russians. One area that really hasn't been looked into that much was how much the United States knew about the incident as it was taking place. And from the piece I did, it looked like the United States knew quite a bit about the incident as it was taking place. We have major NSA listening posts in the area. There's a listening post on Shimya, which is a Aleutian island off Alaska. Major area of interest is the Kamchatka Peninsula. And we have listening posts in Japan. There was a ship that was...
What did we know?
Well, what we should have known was that there was an airline, civilian airliner, flying into Soviet territory, and that the Soviets were reacting to it. Whether we could have done something about that is another question. It might have been possible. There is a procedure called a critic procedure, which enables a listening post to send an important message, emergency message, to the top leaders in Washington within 10 minutes of an event. So if they sent this message to Washington, again, it would have been in the middle of the day in Washington, there would have been time to take some action, because the plane was in Soviet airspace for about 2.5 hours.
Before they...
And you get that a lot from monitoring corporate communications. Also, there might be some monitoring of anti-nuclear protesters.
Is it legal?
It would only be legal if the government can show that there's some foreign involvement in the anti-nuclear movement, and which I don't think they can show. The president at one point said he thought there was some foreign involvement in the anti-nuclear movement. Again, it's just like back in the late 1960s when the government tried to show foreign involvement in the anti-Vietnam War movement. Someone
comes up to you and says, Jim Bamford, you have written 580-some pages about called The Puzzle Palace, which was about the NSA. Should I worry about it? Is there cause for concern here?
Yes, one thing I should say first is that I think the NSA is the most important intelligence agency the United States has. It supplies 85% of all our intelligence. The CIA supplies less than 10%. So I think it's a very important agency. However, the importance of the agency is only when it's directed externally, when all its antennas and listening devices are pointed towards the Soviet Union and foreign countries. I don't think it should be turned internally, that the listening devices of NSA should be used for domestic surveillance purposes. It'd be the equivalent of turning the U.S. Army to patrol the streets of the United States. We really don't need that technology for FISA Court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. And what happens now is that the NSA, if they want to listen to James Bamford or Jane Fonda or anybody in the United States, has to go to this court, this panel of judges, and request permission to do this domestic eavesdropping. The court would look into basically one thing, whether there's a foreign connection. If the U.S. government can show a foreign connection, they could get a warrant to eavesdrop on this U.S. person. But one thing about the court is that it's never turned down a case, or never turned the government down.
Someone once said it's the only court that has never said no to the U.S. government.
That's right. In its history, it's never said no to a warrant. And if it did, there's a thing called the FISA Appeals Court, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Appeals Court, which has never ever heard a case.
Thanks for calling. Let's go to Washington, D.C. Washington?
Yes, I would like to know, how did he come about this access to this information, and why is it now being publicized?
Well, tell about your research and how difficult it was for you to get the information. The book was published first in 1982, is now in paperback. It's called The Puzzle Palace.
Yes, I spent 3 years doing research on the NSA. I'm basically, I have a law degree. I'm basically a researcher, writer, and NSA had never had a book done on it before. It's a very important agency. Very few people, as the program piece indicated, very few people have knowledge of the NSA. I even met a U.S. senator once who didn't even know that there was such a thing as the NSA. So I thought it was very important for the public and people in government to have an idea of what the NSA is. Because requests, I had to interview a good number of former officials, some of them very high, a former director and so forth. So there were a lot of sources I used to put the book together. I'm going to try to retract from me or try to reclassify after I received the material.
In fact, you got available to you during the Carter administration, and then after the change of administration in 1980, they asked you to return the information, and you said no.
That's right. The Justice Department documents dealing with illegal NSA activities. And when the Reagan administration came in, they demanded I give those documents back. And I said no, at one point. What they did do was change the executive order to say now, once the document's been issued, it can be reclassified. And I think that's very dangerous. I used and began pulling things off the shelf that I used in the book. This is after the book came out.